Okay, so this tutorial is a brief review of the y-intercept form. My friend, my coworker, his son was studying on this, so he needed some guidance for how to do this, and I made a quick little worksheet to go along with it. So I decided to complete the worksheet in case anyone else needs help with the same concept, and explain how I do each step so that you guys can follow along. So I'm not going to be super tech savvy about this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the question and then do my workout and show you each step or each relevant step that I do, and then show you my work at the end, and I'll explain it as I go. So this is what I did. I gave a table of values and I wanted to work up to the point where the student would derive the equation. So I broke down each step to get to that point to help with the conceptual understanding. So the first thing I want to do is I want to graph this table. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so 0, -1. Slightly messy, but this is about how it's going to look. So it's increasing, obviously. And then question number 2 is, what is the equation to find the slope from 2 points? And use that to find the slope value. So I can pick any of these 2 points here, and the slope equation would be y2 minus y1, so the change in y, over x2 minus x1. And that would produce the slope, because it's a ratio in terms of x. So whenever x changes 1 unit, the slope is the amount that y changes. So to make this easy, wrong thing. Okay, so I think that it would make the most sense to use the first 2 points. So I got, for my y values, I got 4 and -1. So I would do, on the top of the equation, 4 minus -1, and for the bottom, the x value is 1, and the other x value is 0. So I have 4 minus -1 and 1 minus 0. When you subtract a negative, it equals a positive, so that ends up being 4 plus 1, that's 5. And then the bottom is just 1 minus 0, so that's just 1. So you get a slope of 5. And then part 3. Here is all of the written out work. Part 3 is how does this equation represent finding the space between 2 points on a graph to find the slope? So basically I want to know how visually counting the change in x and the change in y to find the slope, how that corresponds with this equation to see where it came from. So I'm going to go back to my graph to show this. So I'm just going to use the 2 points that I just used for my example. When I want to move from this point to this point and see the change in x, I only move over 1 place. So I represent that by just counting 1 unit. And then for finding the difference in y, when I start at y equals -1, I move up 1 to get to 0, y equals 0, and then I move up 4 more places. So that shows a change from here to here in +5, and then for the x it's just +1. So this section here, the up and down part, that corresponds to the 4 minus -1, since you start at the value 4 and you subtract down to here. And then for the x, that's this portion. This portion represents the 1 minus 0. And then if I want to find the slope, I want to know what is this over this. What is rise over run? And so the value is just the change that we counted going up, which is 5, and then the change that we counted going across is just 1. So that's, again, 5 over 1 equals 5. So y changes 5 units in terms of each time x changes 1 unit. And that ratio of 5 corresponds to any amount that x changes. So, for example, if x changes by 1/2, then the value in which y would change would be 2.5. So that works for anything. And part 4. Now that you know the slope, solve for b by plugging in one of your points for, what is this saying? For, I don't even know what I was saying. Oh, yeah. So now that you know the slope, solve for b by plugging in one of your points into the equation. So I don't know why I wrote a random character, but so you know that the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. M represents the slope, and y and x, they represent the values, the points, and b is where the line crosses the y-axis. So it's the y-intercept, which is why it's called y-intercept form. So for starters, you want to do y equals 5x plus b. And now you have 3 values. So you can choose any point. It makes sense to choose one of the smaller values to make it easier. So I'm going to do, let's just do 4 equals 5 times 1 plus b. So I plugged in 1 for the value of x and 4 for the value of y. And so if I solve that out, 4 equals 5 times 1 is just 5 plus b. So now I just do 4 minus 5 is the value of b. So 4 minus 5 is -1. b equals -1. But just in order to check my work, I'm going to plug in 2 more points, because this is a good method if you have more time on your quiz to just make sure that the other points actually work with the equation. Otherwise, something's going on. So I'm going to, the entire equation is y equals 5x minus 1. And I'm going to start with 0, -1. And that actually will be used in the next equation, because it asks it asks why b represents the y-intercept. So I'll cover that in the next equation. Now I'm just going to solve. -1 equals 5 times 0 minus 1. 5 times 0 is 0, so -1 equals -1 checks out. And then I'll test the 0.29. So then y equals 5x minus 1. 9 equals 5 times the value of 2 minus 1. So 5 times 2 equals 10, minus 1 is 9. So that checks out too. 9 equals 9. So that equation works. And the next question. Why does plugging in a point give you the same information as seeing when the line crosses the y-axis? So if we go back to our graph, even though I'm messy, you know what, I'm going to just draw like a zoomed in version because it's easier to look at. So here we go. The value of 0, -1. And the line looks something like this, more or less. So it crosses here, and whenever you cross the y-axis, x is always equal to 0, because it can't be more or less, or it just wouldn't be on there. So we already have the point x equals 0, but if we needed to find out what the y-intercept was, all we would have to do is plug 0 in for x and solve for y. So I'm going to show you what happens when I plug 0 in to our equation. Y equals 5x minus 1. So y equals 5 times 0 minus 1. We did this in the last part. 5 times 0 is 0, so that only leaves the minus 1, and that's the value of b. So this part will always end up being 0 since you're always multiplying by x equals 0. That is why b represents the y-intercept, because it will just always be what's left in this equation, and that's what the value of y is. So that's why b represents that. And the last question is part 6. Using your equation, find the value of y at x equals -1. So we have our equation. All it is plugging it in. Y equals 5 times -1 minus 1. So 5 times -1 is -5, minus 1, that's -6. So we get a value of y equals -6. And it's always a good idea to like plug this back in and make sure it makes sense. But what I'm going to do as another check is I'm going to display this on the graph and take a look at how my graph looks and see if that value makes sense. So let's go back to our original drawing. This is the x value of -1 right here. So if we go down, since the line is decreasing, it looks to be basically around the -6. So if I drew it neater, it would show exactly where it is, but just to know that it's going in that general direction means that you're probably doing the math right. And that's the answer to the question. So that is like the overview of how this works conceptually. I'm gonna, once you get how these things relate to each other, you can really use it towards any different example. So I'm gonna provide you with another set of values in case you want to try these concepts on your own again, and then I will post the answers in the description, and if you need a video for those values, then I can make another one. So, oops. I'm going to give you these values. And the last two are the ones that you have to solve for once you've made your equation. It's slightly more challenging, but not really. It's the same exact steps. Just has fractions. Right, so I'll read them out too. X equals -2 well, yeah, I'm not going to read them that slow. So -2, -3, 0, 2, 1, 1.5, 3, unknown, unknown, and then y equals 5. So that is the next step, and hopefully this helps you guys a little bit. I just thought like I would share it in case anyone needs it. So let me know if you need any more help or if I need to explain something better, and good luck.